This podcast is the design of City Sites Urban Media, and our goal is to bring into focus the difference between culture and God's ideas found in His Word. To learn more, go to citysitesurbanmedia.com.
Majority of women receiving abortions are not teenagers. She is most likely a mother, with almost 60% of those seeking an abortion already having given birth, and she most likely belongs to an organized religion.
Almost 1 in 3 American women will have an abortion at some point in their lives. But even though the Supreme Court made it legal in 1973, states have been having a party with restrictions since then, testing the limits of federal law. States usually allow abortions when life-threatening health issues are involved or in cases of rape or incest.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
And I think that January 22nd, 1973 would be an historic day.
This Supreme Court nominee, Judge Kavanaugh, is going to destroy women's reproductive freedom.
This is the City Sites Podcast with Larry Kutzler.
Reverend Brian Walker is my guest today. He is the co-founder of Everlasting Light Ministries, which is also known as Rich in Mercy Post-Abortion and Miscarriage Recovery. Brian and his wife Denise are powerful examples of how God can heal lives following abortion and place them in strategic places to tell the truth about abortion and its effect upon a person, a family, and a nation. Brian is one of those ministers who is the real deal. He loves God, and he practices that love as he works the Sidewalk Counseling Ministry that takes place in front of several abortion clinics here in the Twin Cities. It has been just reported that Poland, under new governmental leadership, is considering a nationwide ban on abortion. This kind of ban could only be done because Poland is 92% Catholic. It seems that it takes a moral conviction like Catholics in Poland to defeat abortion. I wonder how difficult it will be to fight against abortion in nations without any moral compass. Today we're going to talk with Brian Walker about some of the issues surrounding abortion. And Brian, welcome. And I want to just dive right in. And I know you're the kind of guy, you're a no-nonsense guy, and I know I can ask you these questions and I know I'll get truthful answers. So has the moral voice, Brian, of the church on the issue of abortion, has it been increasing or decreasing in 2019?
Thanks for that compliment about a straight shooter. And a straight shooter is going to say the answer to that is both. And the reason why I'm saying it is that the abortion issue is I don't say it's a divisive issue. I say it's a defining issue. I'll tell you what that means. It's basically a sheeps and goats thing, wheat and chaff thing. Some churches, some denominations have become more outspoken against it, more defined in terms of their position papers or doctrine or some of the resolutions that they pass. And other denominations have stepped back from being that voice for abortion. The ELCA years ago over marriage and abortion, the other churches from the Missouri Synod and others that have broken away from the ELCA because they wanted to pursue a more biblical reasoning about abortion, that God prohibits it, and that man and woman should be the definition of marriage. And so you have churches that have receded from their strong anti-abortion stance, and you have those that have advanced it, become more outspoken, more clear about their anti-abortion stance. So I would say the answer to that is both. Overall, though, abortion as an issue through various polls, I was looking at one this morning, has fallen in terms of being important. It's usually the economy, stupid, and other things like that. And that's the real danger, Larry, is that abortion is that one of those moral compass things. And when you go downhill on that, a lot of other things follow.
Well, we have seen in the news some legislation, especially in the northeast states, have passed legislation that pretty much gives a woman a right to have abortion, late-term abortions. What does that actually mean? What are the laws that have been passed? What do they actually provide for a woman?
Well, they don't provide health care. The one in New York and Virginia and some of the other northeast states, of course, provide for abortion up to 9 months. When the Supreme Court passed Roe and Wade, it allowed states some latitude in terms of prohibiting abortion up to a certain age, or I should say past a certain age, and that varies from state to state. And so what New York did is said, we're just going to blow the roof off of this and go all the way up to 9 months, literally before a child will pass through the birth canal. And also they are going to allow to non-physicians to perform abortions. That's been very vague as to who that person would be, what minimal training they would have. And so like I tell people, we don't have to fear the back alley. We need to fear the back office now, because who will be performing these abortions? And what happens if you have God forbid, a perforated uterus? Is a LPN competent to stop the bleeding and to save this woman's life? We have a case of Tanya Reeves in Chicago. Many years ago, she died at a Planned Parenthood facility that was not designed in terms of the workings within the clinic to perform a surgical abortion. She bled out on the table. And so these are things that women need to know, that not only are you going up to 9 months, but a lot of these states, they want to expand abortion so aggressively, they're willing to take that out of a doctor's hands. Remember, the mantra before was safe and rare and legal. It's not safe. It's definitely not safe. It's never been safe for the preborn human being, and it's not safe for women as well. Also, I think that spiritually those states have gotten darker. When you have legislators and a governor doing high fives when this bill is signed, and Trade Center 1 being lit up in pink, you heard an outrage, even from people who are kind of moderately in the middle. I've even heard a little outrage from some pro-choice who felt that was passing the line. It really put, I think, New York State in a bad light. Now, the sad thing is that a lot of these states will become possibly abortion destinations for women who want to go up to 9 months. If you don't take your child's life earlier in gestation and you go up to 9 months, I think you're conflicted as to whether this is good or not. And then at the last moment, you want to have an abortion. I think that it reflects poorly spiritually on the legislators, and also, quite frankly, it reflects poorly on the church. When you have legislators who feel that they can pass a law like that and get away with it, it really says more about the church than it does about them.
That's what I would agree with. I think that the church does not have the moral fiber or influence as it once had. And, evil is, as you know, Brian, it never stays static. It's always moving. Even if it's defeated, it's going to continue to come back again and again and again and push the line further than it's ever been pushed before. Because what you're really talking about is infanticide. You're really killing a live baby at 9 months. I mean, let's face it, that baby could live if it was given the proper nourishment and care. On the other side of the coin of this legislation, we had states such as Alabama and Georgia and Ohio. They passed a near ban on abortion, and even though those laws in those states are headed toward the Supreme Court, what is happening in those states that has prompted such sweeping changes in spite of the Roe versus Wade constitutional law?
Yeah, those states reacted to the infanticide from other states. Illinois is probably worse than New York. Those states in the South, so-called Bible Belt states, and I think that the pro-life infrastructure, for want of a better word, was already in place so that they could pass this kind of legislation. Like I said before, in other states, it spoke more to the church that the legislators thought that they can get away with passing a bill like this. Then in the Bible Belt, the infrastructure was already there and the supports was already there to have these type of so-called radical pro-life bills. I think those states, quite frankly, in a spiritual sense, will be blessed by God. And some of the judgments that are coming on the world will bypass them. Who knows? Those areas are subject to, hurricanes and the rain resulting from them. I'm not going to be prophetic about that. But I think in the spiritual realm, definitely the people will be blessed, and individuals will be blessed, and churches for sure, and their leadership will be blessed because they've yielded to the still small voice of the Holy Spirit on this matters. What will happen in a practical way? Sure, this will be challenged. It will go up to the Supreme Court. And this is something that the pro-life movement has known for decades, that eventually these laws, when Roe Wade falls, it was just bad law. even honest pro-choice attorneys and people that know about these things will admit that it was a badly constructed ruling in terms of just legal precedent and legal procedures. It was poorly done, and as a result, we have over 60 million. And also, our birth rates are not at a replacement level. And so, yes, we do need folks to come into this country, albeit legally, because many of our American folks do not want to have children or putting them off so far. You're going past the age range to have children. And so I think these states at least have the backbone and the spiritual strength to withstand the fire that's coming. It will go up. Some of these states are going to be boycotted economically. We've already seen that. Hollywood pulling out. I was not aware of how large the film industry was in Georgia. I was really quite surprised. But my attitude is that let them pull out. We can't prevent that. That'll be on them. I'm sure the Lord will provide another way to bring funds back into those states that want to stand for righteousness.
Right, that's what I was going to say. You have to stand for righteousness. Brian, sometimes, we talk about we're against abortion, and because it's just a moral thing. It's doing what's right when it concerns life. And abortion is about death. It's a culture of death. But when you start talking about how does an abortion affect a person? How does abortion affect a family? Or how does abortion affect a nation? What are the effects? Let's start with a person. What are the effects of abortion emotionally upon a person? What happens to a person who has an abortion?
Oh, I could speak to that directly because my wife, Denise, of heading toward 40 years, we had an abortion back when we graduated from college. We were engaged at the time. I planned to be married in May, and we had the abortion in January. Devastates the individual. I felt that I'd lost my mantle as a man, as a provider, as a protector. My self-esteem definitely went down. I lost my aggressiveness and a good sense of being a go-getter, moving ahead. And also I knew spiritually I was lost. I was not saved back then, but I was churched, and I knew what I was doing was wrong, even though I felt that I was being supportive of the situation. I would say that it robs people of their personhood, man or woman. A woman as a provider in terms of life, carrier of life, nurture of life, and for men as a provider and protector of life. And so those two things are robbed from either one of us. And it had a devastation on my marriage, and, was segueing into your family question. It devastated our marriage for 17 years. I mean, Denise will tell you that she calls it 17 years of hell. She was a good actress, put on a good face, but not too deep below the surface. You could tell that there were areas of disrespect. Like Denise said, it would be hard to be intimate with somebody who had our child killed because he didn't want to be a father, did not want to be responsible, did not think it was the right time. And all those were cowardly excuses on my part. And that does not endear you to your spouse. It definitely does not endear you to God. And by God's grace and His mercy, we were able to get to healing. We always thought that it was a matter of income, we were poor, a matter that we were fornicating and shacking before marriage. You thought it was all these different things, but at the root of it was the abortion itself. And it manifested in other ways. And some people, it can manifest in drug use, alcoholism, promiscuity. It's never positive. And then on the family, enlarged the circle, it affected my kids. They always felt that this tension under the surface between Denise and I. In fact, it got to a point where they were deciding on who they were going to go with if the marriage should split. We looked good on the surface. Even had a marriage ministry going. Everything looked well on the surface, but it was not the case below. So it's like a ripple effect. It affects the woman and the man, takes away their personhood, the role that God has designed for each of us to do. It rolls into your marriage and or relationships. Many of the relationships that have an abortion between them end. And there have been studies on that through both abortion ministries. Vicki Thorne has done a lot of good work on that. She's out of Milwaukee. And these relationships end. Why? Because how can you live with each other when you both conspired together to kill a human being.
If you translate that now, Brian, into the nation, abortion legalized in 1973 has opened the doors for other evil things to come into our society. Tell us how it affects the nation.
If families and individuals comprise a nation, and of course we know that they do, you have a multiplier effect. You have hurting, conflicted, sinful individuals, families, marriages, and you just multiply that by 60 million. I'm talking regardless of the reason. Usually the egregious cases are put up front, rape and incest. But the effect on the nation is that I believe it accelerates judgment that could have been forestalled. And I believe the Lord advances judgment in terms of time. We always talk about judgment in terms of end times. I think there's judgment that comes upon a nation. Now, we're a relatively young nation in the world still. I think we have a false sense of entitlement in the sense that we're too big to fail. Nothing could hurt the United States. We're separated by two oceans. And we look back to World War II, we have Japan and we have the Nazi Germany, and we kind of felt a little smug. These things would never touch us. But an apple rots from the inside. And I think there's just certain things that we see happening that is a result of abortion. Abortion was always posed as a way for women to control their own bodies, their own destinies. It was always seen as an advantage to keep the population down, especially with certain groups. Margaret Sanger. It was always seen as an unfortunate but a positive step. And we're reaping what we've sown. More violence, the rise of STDs, relationship breakups and marriage rates went down. Also, health risk. There is a link between abortion and breast cancer. There's a film called Hush, Hush, out of Canada, and that was Poonam Kumar, the pro-choice documentary filmmaker. She's still pro-choice, but she did find a legitimate link between abortion and breast cancer. And if you graph it, when abortion started out, then breast cancers start to go up as well. And so this is has a medical impact, it has emotional impact. The lack of trust between men and women, I think, is high, reflected in divorce rates. And also the ultimate one is the spiritual devastation that abortion has on a country, whether you're Christian or not, regardless of what your faith. And in fact, incidentally, we've seen more people of self-identified Muslim faith coming to these abortuaries, especially in the Twin Cities. We have a growing Muslim population. We've seen Somalis come. We've seen women with burqas come. 5 or 10 years ago, you never saw that. But now you see an increase in self-identified Muslims. I know a burqa is a lousy way to identify a Muslim, but it does give you a bit of a head start. Mm-hmm. And so now a lot of the Muslims have been Americanized, second, third generation, are coming to these abortuaries to have their children killed. And the Quran is very clear itself that there are prohibitions against abortion in Islam. It's growing, and I think it just takes a toll on the country. And also, one other thing, Larry, is that I've always seen abortion and abortion advocates, abortion providers, and abortion marketers as a flip side of the coin of the LGBTQ movement. They're one and the same. They're joined at the hip because a lot of their advocates are joined at the hip already. Money's come to both. Leadership comes to both. And I talked years ago about people wanting the pro-lifers to get more involved in, LGBTQ opposition. And I said, it'll come. We don't have to go after them. They're going to be there. And so now you see marches, and you'll have Planned Parenthood sponsoring gay marches and gay weeks, underwriting these things quite openly and having no problem with it. Also sending ambassadors, if you will, into these communities from Planned Parenthood, train them to worm their way into different cultural communities, different ethnic communities, and have their women see Planned Parenthood as the first stop for their health care.
I want to thank Brian Walker for joining me today for the City Sites podcast. We'll rejoin Brian next week as we conclude this conversation about abortion and the church. Next week, you'll hear Brian say,
I think the big problem is with the church, the body of Christ. The judgment starts in the house of the Lord. And so I think that pastors need to be awakened. My wife and I, through our ministry, Rich and Mercy, have had hundreds of women and men come through our post-abortion recovery, and all of them, we give them an exit evaluation before the last class ends, and all of them have said, I wish my pastor had preached against abortion. I may not have gone down this route.
Thank you for joining us today. Every Friday, we bring you this podcast with interviews with people who are challenging the status quo of Christianity and challenging the cultural norms of our day. Please help us get the word out by sharing the link to this podcast with your online friends and family. Our website also contains other podcasters who are part of the City Sites network of communicators, all sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. Our website is citysitesurbanmedia.com.